Hello and welcome on Maksakova TV YouTube channel. My new program, Synthetic Warfare, begins tonight. And so to say, the first D-Day or detoxifying from disinformation. I'm going to begin with Nathalie Vogel. First of all, let me greet you. Nathalie Vogel, Senior Fellow, European Values Center for Security Policy. Am I correct?
Exactly. Thank you for having me, Mash. I'm very happy to be your first guest and very honored.
Thank you so much for finding time for me. And everything what happens in the world right now for me is very important and different because I'm looking on everything what's happening from Ukraine. And that changes a little bit my view. And that's why I want especially that you help us to detoxify from that vast disinformation that we have all around. And let's begin with some very precise questions. You have studied for many years how Rus propaganda works. And you have learned how to masterfully counteract it. Tell us, please, what are the main areas of Russian disinformation today? I wonder if their goals have changed and their objectives have changed over the past year.
Well, there is a lot to unpack here. Thank you. It's a very, very interesting question. Indeed, although we are witnessing various forms of disinformation from Russia, not only from Russia, by the way, from other countries, from China, for instance, but my specific field is Russia. It is common knowledge among experts that there is nothing new to it. They are cooking the old recipes in the old pots. The only thing that it really changed the entire deal is the emergence of new technologies and the internet, of course. And the most recent evolution in that respect is artificial intelligence, which has the potential to really change the game. However, I belong to the more optimistic fringe of the experts who are convinced that artificial intelligence can also be used to counter disinformation, to spot disinformation, and to neutralize disinformation. So, yes, there is a problem. And of course, we are facing things like deep fakes and an incredible wave of disinformation in that respect. But we also have this tool to identify such phenomena.
That's why I think that the name of the program, Synthetic Warfare, is quite correct to use now, because the information generally, there are just loads of it at the moment.
Well, yes. I mean, software can be actually developed to counter or to detect such for instance, such contents online or clips on YouTube. I mean, they can be deep fakes, can be easily identified. The only problem is really the amount. If we are facing like carpet bombing of disinformation, you can't be everywhere at the same time. But I mean, you can put the platforms in front of their responsibilities. Meta, so former Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms in front of their responsibilities, and they have to police their own platforms as well. So this is one side of the solution. But there are others, of course. The providers can be also put in front of their responsibilities. You have ways to detect such things. It's time and energy consuming, and it's also money consuming, of course. But I think that honestly, this is only a small part of the problem. New technologies are available. Yes, they can be used in a very toxic way, but they also can be used to our own benefit. This we have to keep in mind. We should not panic. The other side wants us to panic. We are not dropping the ball, and we are keeping our eyes on the topic, and there is no loss of control in that respect. We have all the cards to win the game, and we are by far technologically superior to them. I mean, it's like we are worlds ahead, technologically speaking. So when push comes to shove, we will win. We'll win.
Also, besides the Meta group, besides Facebook and Instagram, where you can possibly identify who stands behind the text, there are also these armies of bots. Yeah. And yes, my actually next question is about a guy called Prigozhin. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely criminal type of using everything it can reach, comes to the point where we have these trolls. Can you name also, beside maybe this Prigozhin or him precisely, anyone whom you consider more damaging and more dangerous than others?
Well, I mean, everything has been said and investigated already by the FBI on Yevgeny Prigozhin's internet agencies. The work has been done. We know everything there is to know. We know where they are. We know who these people are. We know how they are linked to Russian intelligence. You know, there is it. I mean, there is no place to hide for Prigozhin. We know everything. Okay. Now, the man, as such, if you will, is someone who. I mean, it's a. Honestly, as someone who's been studying these activities for a while. What a bankruptcy for the Russian regime and its intelligence services to entrust these tasks to a thug, someone who's been convicted in the past. I mean, he's doing the job of he's at the nexus of the crime syndicate, intelligence agencies, and military forces. So he has all kinds of shady activities, which actually are entrusted to professionals. I'm not sure, honestly, if I were a Russian intelligence officer, I would not like to have a guy like that doing the business I've been trained to do. So there are two possibilities. Either Putin is entrusting him with those tasks, and some Russian officials don't like it, or he does this with the complete backing of Russian intelligence. My theory is that Russian intelligence probably does not like that very much. This man is a criminal. He has always been a criminal. He has started his career as a criminal. And it's really, yes, it's a bankruptcy of the power vertical of the Kremlin. I mean, this is the guy who does the dirty jobs. It says everything.
There is a ridiculous moment that this precise building in Olgino, we're talking about this Olgino and the trolls from Olgino.
Yes.
And the building itself belonged before to KGB, and they had all those types of those ways to listen to people's conversations via surveillance. What? Yes. And that is something that was done in that building precisely.
It's been completely outsourced to a guy who was a restaurant owner. I mean, this is just like I mean, you had Sergei Zhirnov before.
Yes,
I'm sure he would have a lot to say about a restaurant owner during intelligence business. But anyway, so this guy has owes his career to the crime syndicate, to the St. Petersburg crime syndicate, to Moscow mafia contacts, and to the Putin circles. That's who he is. Yes, I mean, his criminal activities. It's a single blood trail from the beginning, from the 90s. You can follow it. And the activities of the troll, I mean, they are not even really efficient if you look at it. First of all, because they got the activities got uncovered very quickly. They were the first ones who had been working there in these troll factories who defected and gave interviews, you remember, explaining at length what they were doing, so everybody knew. And then the impact that they've had. They tried to meddle in the elections in the United States, but real intelligence operations wouldn't have been that easily uncovered. So what they are doing really is disruption. They are disrupting the political debate. They are exacerbating the narratives, pouring oil in discussions, etc., etc. That, yes, that they are able to do. But above that level, they the impact is quite limited. The very fact that he moved very quickly from one task to another proves that they did not really deliver. Now, trying to meddle into the U.S. elections was already a crime, and he's been indicted for that. I mean, his company has been indicted for that. He's on the sanctions list. His family is on the sanctions list. There is nowhere to hide for this guy. And I've said it before, but honestly, Prigozhin is going to end up in The Hague, and that is if everything goes right for him.
Well, there were some even gossips that he had digged into Africa about 15 billions of cash money in dollars. I don't know if that could possibly be true.
Masha, when you have nowhere to go, where are you? I mean, he has all major intelligence services in the world looking at him. He has all independent platforms, Russian independent platforms abroad looking at him. The guy can't run anywhere. And even, these people who run to Dubai thinking that, in Dubai, I'm safe. Trust me, in Dubai, you're not safe. There is everyone looking at you in Dubai. There's everyone listening to your conversation in Dubai. So believing as a Russian that you can escape to Dubai and be like kind of safe, no.
By the way, you said about listening to the conversations. Somebody made a joke that there, about 2 weeks ago, or even maybe 3 weeks by now, there was a conversation between another Prigozhin, a producer, but also a Russist, one who supports very much the war and Putin, and makes concerts together with his wife, and his name is also Prigozhin. And that conversation between him and the billionaire Akhmedov was leaked in a way, and everyone was listening to it. And in that conversation, maybe I should even put some bits of it and translate it into English, because maybe, it's so to say, it was not translated. Maybe not everyone knows, but they were swearing so about Putin, about the war and everything, that I don't know if I will find the possible words
Translation.
for translating it. Yes, because I'm not as keen on that type of vocabulary in English, but I will do my best, and maybe on the end of our program I will make a little little spots of that conversation. Someone made a joke that since that the other guy is also Prigozhin by name, that they that by chance
Wanted to listen to another conversation.
someone got the task and did not precisely understand which one of them should he listen to. Well, it's a joke, but still. Now we're saying about Prigozhin and all his companies that they are overviewed very well. But a lot of Russian IT specialists left Russia. How many of them do you think are still working for the FSB from abroad?
Do you think that if I had an exact answer to that question, I would be sitting here and chatting about it with you? Yes. Well, I mean, it's a problem that that many countries have given asylum or offered political asylum or just granted staying permit to Russian nationals working in the IT sphere. There is no such thing in Russia as first the internet is completely surveilled, and there are no such things as independent IT specialists currently in Russia. It doesn't exist. The one that left, that used to be working for independent corporations before, like the companies that when they still used to work, and were able to work before it became completely impossible. Those ones, there are plenty of them, for instance, in Georgia. There are plenty of them in Germany as well. It's a challenge for counterintelligence to keep an eye on this, because you cannot put a counterintelligence official behind every single Russian abroad. We are free societies, and what comes with a free societies, if you compare with a closed society like Russia, is that they are evolving in areas where, for instance, the diaspora, where they get in touch with a great number of fellow Russians, of whom they probably don't know if they have an intelligence background or not. So even if they are not directly in touch with intelligence services at home, it is highly probable that abroad they start to socialize with fellow Russians and, for instance, get recruited. That's highly possible. And we know that it's one of the favorite technique of Russian intelligence to recruit in the diaspora. I mean, again, you had Sergei Zhirnov. He knows much more about this than me. So there is this one thing. It is a challenge for the countries offering asylum. Mm-hmm. Because, it comes with social mapping, which is a dimension that you have to take into consideration when you look into how someone or with whom someone socializes. And you start doing social mapping, and then you see, oh, he's there with that one, and that one is a former official who is related to that one who is FSB. And now, how do you prevent these people abroad to socialize? You can't. And you have real cases that are really in the gray zone. How long does it take for counterintelligence to debrief a defector? Months, if not years, to make sure that someone who defects is actually a defector. not a double one, a double agent, or somebody trying to infiltrate a foreign intelligence service. It's highly complicated. So this massive wave of immigration of IT specialists, but not only IT specialists, there are other areas that are tricky as well. It poses a challenge. You don't want to be completely paranoid. Sometimes they come with an entire family. What are you going to do? Are you going to expel the entire family? Or you have cases, and I have one in mind specifically, you have cases with foreign trained Russian specialists married to a lady whose father is part of the Siloviki. What do? Are you going to expel the entire family? It's very, very difficult. Very difficult questions arise when you look into this specific area. So what I can tell you is no, there is no such thing as an independent IT company in the Russian Federation currently. We have the example of Kaspersky, but I could give you other examples. Yandex is completely monitored. You name it, they are all under surveillance. The internet is under surveillance as well. They have keys to decrypt any encrypted messages. There is no such thing as internet anonymity in Russia. And there is no such thing as an independent internet expert in Russia still working independently. It doesn't exist because it would pose a danger to the regime. So either they are part of the system or they have left. And if they've left, there is another question that arises. Have they left because they wanted to escape being sent to the front? Or have they left because they protest the war? And if they protest the war of February 2020, what did they say in 2014? And I won't even go back. What did they say when Russia invaded Georgia, which should be actually the question. So is this, I just woke up and I noticed my country is invading another country, then they should have woken up 8 years earlier. Yes, all these are questions. It's difficult to put oneself in those shoes. Again, in 2014, the internet wasn't free in Russia either. So, as internet experts, they should have known
what they're dealing with.
Yes. Why did they wake up so late? I mean, there can be plenty of reasons, family reasons, young graduate who just got a job, etc., etc. But when you're part of a system that is a regime like Russia, and your specific area is the internet, I think it does not take very long to understand that you are actually living in a dictatorship.
There is also another question that rises automatically when I listen to what is going on around. People who, for instance, are infiltrated. How are they accepted by everyone around them? The question is, do people in European countries realize how dangerous Russia is? Do people in European countries by now, we are now in April 2023, the war is already more than 1 year. I mean, the full-scale war and everything you mentioned before, that were also war crimes done previously. The point is that by 2022, by February, some experts were saying that, well, people in Europe do not always realize how dangerous Russian people are, Russian propaganda is, how dangerous Putin is, and well, all that stuff. What do you think? Did that aspect change? Because then people could be of great help to detect and to protect from that
Well,
invasion.
it boils down to the impact of disinformation. Is disinformation having such an impact that when confronted with the reality of, let's say, war crimes, a target audience refuses to see what is happening? And this comes back to the first question that you've asked me about the goal and the objectives of disinformation. It's a mistake to assume that the goal of disinformation is ultimately to just feed false information. Primarily, yes, maybe. But the ultimate goal of disinformation is to demoralize a target group and to create such a situation in which the target group, so the audience, does not believe anything anymore. Is so completely bombarded by false information and is busy sorting out what is true, what is not true, that they say, oh, everybody lies and we won't know the truth anyway. And create such a situation where mistrust and distrust is the result. They distrust media, any media, and at the end of the day, even their own national broadcast or their own, what we would call an objective media landscape, where there are plenty of information sources when you can check, and where there is contradiction, where there is pluralism. Our own media landscape is under attack. And that is actually the goal, is to have a population that is, like, yeah, I don't care, basically. And this level of demoralization is what they go after. Not primarily, feeding nonsense. That's the first. And after that, you can do whatever you want with such a target group, because they like. They will go, Bucha, what do I know? Bucha never happened, perhaps. Perhaps yes, perhaps no, what do I care? That is the goal of disinformation, get you to that level. And ultimately, they lose their own arbitrary, their own capacity of judging, their own assessment, ability to assess an information, what is right, what is not right. At the end of the day, what is a crime, what is not a crime. It is horrendous what disinformation can achieve when it is done at such an industrial level, like the Russian Federation do it. And where we see it specifically. Now, these people who start doubting Bucha, and who start, these conspiracy theorists are a fringe only in our societies. It's not, it's troubling enough, but it's not a majority. Where it is really troubling is in Africa, because we dropped the ball on Africa. RT Africa is a carpet bombing with disinformation. It is at a level which you cannot imagine. Of course, Russia is being portrayed as anti-colonialist. Russia, the colonial power that has blood on its hand in the South Caucasus, that has been at war with neighboring country, conquering, stealing territories, has managed to portray itself in Africa as a great savior and the anti-colonial power. and has managed to rewrite history and geography to such a point that the majority of the Africans are actually fed disinformation made in Moscow day in, day out. And because we are so Eurocentrist and only looking within our little communities, we completely neglected. We thought we're going to ban RT from broadcasting in Europe and Sputnik. And yeah, no, because the disinformation is coming back via RT Africa, for instance, the French speaking, back to the social networks. And it lands in French speaking communities. So you see, it's like you are throwing the Russians out of the door and they come in through the window. And you have Africa, but you don't only have Africa. If you look at what they are doing in Latin America, it's a nightmare. A nightmare. The populations there of various countries in Latin America are being completely indoctrinated by Russian disinformation. It is scary. So, yes, we can say that at the European level, there have been some results. Some countries have reached a great level of cyber literacy and media literacy. And countries that are cyber literate and media literate, so they're good with computers and they know how to read the papers, because they teach that at school, like in Finland. They teach the kids to read the newspaper and to check the sources. These populations are resilient against disinformation. It's very hard to demoralize a population like that. But in other countries where nothing has done, well, you know, Russian disinformation works like that. They are successful because we let them be successful, because we let them exploit our vulnerabilities. If by being vulnerable, we invite them, they will take the opportunity and they will take advantage of their position to disinform, to conduct influence operations, to demoralize, etc., etc. In countries where they know that the population is really resilient, they don't even try anymore. They know that the battle is lost. So we were busy with Europe. And what did they do? What they always do? They moved to another turf and they bagged in the entire African continent. And here we are.
It looks like it is time for acts or laws. Like, for instance, it was after the Second World War that named that type of information glorification of fascism. And there was a way to stop that type of information. I think it is time also to find also, I don't know, maybe we should start in Ukraine or, I don't know, in international courts, but before it gets too late. The question of glorification of Russianism.
Of Russian imperialism. Well, you know, their thing is really revisionism. Their biggest weapon is revisionism. So they question historical facts and they question geography. They question borders. They question even the very fact of questioning the concept of Ukrainian identity, Ukrainian statehood, Ukrainian nation as such. Now, I won't tell you because you're in Ukraine, and certainly as someone who is of Cossack descent, I can tell you, if you read one book about Cossack history, you know there is such a thing as Ukrainian identity. You have to be completely autistic not to see that. And they still manage not only to convince their own population, but also try to convince other countries that well, Ukraine is it's not really a state, or it's a failed state, and all the narratives. um, Rewriting history is something that is always on their agenda, and we should not let that happen. We should not. We should speak about the Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement. We should speak about facts that they don't like to talk about, but that are their history and their crimes. And so it's just right that we remember that there has been recently a Remembrance Day on the Katyn massacres. Bucha massacres will be remembered, etc., etc., because they might forget their history, but we don't forget ours. So ultimately, this will lead to the collapse of the Russian Federation, I'm convinced, from within, and because it's this negationism and this revisionism is really a Russian crisis. They are attempting to rewrite their own history.
Well, we were talking about how people react, how do people detect maybe in their surroundings that type of infiltrated fellows. But also there is a huge work done since 2008, because in 2008, Cyber NATO was created. Well, it is also interesting that same year when war in Georgia happened, same year when Chancellor Merkel did not let Georgia and Ukraine to enter NATO and the European Union. In fact, she interfered and prevented it. But in same year, 2008, also Cyber NATO was created, which is, of course, of great help for everyone. How much has been achieved? Do the results correspond to the big name?
So the NATO cyber commands have been operating for quite some time in various NATO countries, and of course NATO became a priority as a result of the cyber attacks that had been multiplying and which could be already attributed to the Russian Federation. So yes. The results are there in terms of information and expertise sharing. It means that NATO members are in a solid alliance when it comes to countering cyber attacks. But of course, it depends. Every NATO country is independent, and every NATO country has its own facilities. And of course, like most of the things within NATO, it's all a question of good and swift coordination. I think that we've come a long way. Technology has evolved, but you remember I just said we are way ahead of, technologically speaking, of the Russian Federation, and certainly NATO countries are, when it comes to cyber defense, like it's not even the same planet. We are in another universe. If you look at the capabilities and the capacities. So yes, I would say it's a big success. Well, of course, you cannot always say it's not an area where you can prevent something. You can counter. I'm a great fan of those this aspect of NATO. NATO in cyberspace, I think it's something quite unique. There is a lot of expertise. There are countries that are simply, even small countries. If you take Estonia has an incredible, it's a huge potential, or it's a huge plus for NATO in terms of expertise. Small Estonia. Can you imagine that? So yes, I think we are better with them than without them. That's what I would say.
I'm partly Estonian. My father was half Estonian, so I'm very proud about it. And I should say that this wonderful example with Estonia is, of course, very inspiring. But at the same time, for Ukraine, it would be, of course, great to be a full member of Cyber NATO, since unfortunately we're not yet in general NATO. But the moment we were going to enter the Cyber NATO, Hungary blocked Ukraine's entry. And, well, many harmful initiatives come from Hungary generally, well, permanently for Ukraine and in general also. It looks like Russia has infiltrated all Hungary with its spies and dirty money, though Hungary is a part of Cyber NATO. Doesn't it look a little bit weird to you?
If we had 3 more hours, we could discuss Hungary, which is, for me, has what is really incredible for me is, well, first of all, on the question of infiltration, I'm not sure it is so much a question of infiltration as a question of a country that thinks that it can have an alliance with the devil without landing in hell. The Orban government has gone amok. And even the Polish government that had halfway good relations has not gone, has distanced itself from the Orban government. The thing is, the nationalist sentiments there are leading to a total blindness. I must say, on the part of the European Union, they have not always been very intelligent in the way they dealt with Orban. But still, I'm speaking especially of the German government during the migration crisis. Which put them in front of a fait accompli, and did not handle the case very well with neighboring countries, and put Hungary in a very unpleasant situation. Namely, they were the ones who were supposed to defend the EU borders, and they did it, and that they got criticized for it. So there I can understand that these exacerbated anti-EU sentiments, etc., etc. Now, when it comes to anti-NATO sentiments, I don't really see that. But I see that we have a nationalistic government that poses a threat to the cohesion and the security of Central Eastern Europe. And that should be of concern. There are 2 countries that every now and then run amok. The number 1 is Turkey, and the number 2 is Hungary. So, in terms of information sharing within NATO and support for Ukraine, there is always the possibility to have some type of coalition of the willing within NATO. You can do a collaboration with Ukraine and leave the Hungarians out and not share anything with the Hungarians if they constitute a liability. And I would favor such a solution.
By the way, do you think that there is really a large support of Orban, and that those elections lately were completely, well, how should I say, were completely transparent?
You know, I would love to answer that question, but I do not have the competence to answer that question. I have an opinion, but this is not. I'm not here to share opinions. I'm here to share expertise, and I wouldn't be able to give you an expert answer to that. I'll give you, if you care for a piece of opinion, the way Orban has been dealing with the question of the free press is already a testimony to how he respects the democratic standards. And the free press is essential for opinion building before an election.
He neglected his law reform. There should have been in a European way reformed courts, and generally the laws are not quite. And for how many years already? I mean, he's postponing all the time those reforms that should have been done years ago.
Well,
I'm asking because Turkey is also facing elections in May, and that is a very interesting question: how it is going to happen there and what is going to happen there. Because as we can see from those opinion polls, are not always in favor of the present president.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it was. I mean. We will see how it works out. Turkey is facing a terrible wave of economic problems, including inflation. So, people here can count how much money they've got in their wallet at the end of the month, and this is what is going to make the decision in the election. And nothing else.
We'll see. I can't resist from asking you about what is your view at the recent leaks of classified information from the Pentagon.
Yes. You remember how I just mentioned that one of the thing with the Russians is that they are very quickly able to move turfs. They see something is not working, they will jump into another area. What we have neglected to look into are some communities, like online activities, because we thought, what the heck, gamers community? Why would gamers community be important? Well, let me tell you this. Not only that, but there are, for instance, communities on Tinder, guess what, that are infiltrated as well. We just heard from German intelligence agencies which issued a warning not to use the app and not to share information because Russian intelligence is collecting them. Yes, on Tinder. So they are approaching people who are affiliated to the government or affiliated to the military, of course. And it's the good old way. It's the good old honeypot technique. And the gamers are also a community that has been infiltrated. So now the Russian intelligence goes literally shopping where there is an offer. Mm. And yes, you can argue putting a 21-year-old in the position of handling such information is irresponsible. And of course, at the beginning of such an intelligence disaster, there is always a human mistake. And I think the mistake was just to entrust a guy that is literally immature with such task, and let him have access to such information. It's a mistake of the system. It has happened in the past. Remember Snowden? And it will happen over and over again, because where there are people, there are mistakes. Now, of course, the impact here is quite problematic. We don't know yet who, if there were an intermediary, if and how the Russians intervene. We don't know yet. There are some troubling figures appearing in the course of the investigation. We'll know more in the next weeks, I guess. We should not over-dramatize, but it's certainly nothing to rejoice about.
Please advise us in Ukraine. Which direction of counter-propaganda and the fight against Russian disinformation should be strengthened right away?
Masha, I'm quite reluctant to give advice now to the Ukrainians for one reason, is that if I were to give advice to, let's say, the specialists of psychological warfare or the ones who fight against disinformation in Ukraine, in my own capacity, it would be just ridiculous. It would be just like if I said I play chess once a month. I said to Garry Kasparov, hey, this is the way you should play your next game. The Ukrainians are probably one of the best specialists on fighting disinformation. They are excellent experts in psychological warfare, in information warfare. They are very young, trained academics, multilingual, usually trained in foreign universities, or people who've been in the army, have been abroad. It's the new generation. This is why Russia is having a hell of a time winning the information war in this area. In other areas, yes. Because the Ukrainians have a high level of expertise. Russian disinformation is having a hard time prevailing. So strengthening the Ukrainian capacities, I think it will happen if we have more information sharing. It's already happening. And I would say, thank God. And most of the time, because I've been in such process, involved in such process, it's us receiving information from the Ukrainians, pointing out at cases of major disinformation in our outlets, which we had not noticed, and they warn us. So yes, we have excellent expert. And let me add one thing. We have a Ukrainian Ukrainian defense hub at the European Value Center for Security Policy in Prague. Those are young Ukrainian academics, and they do a fantastic job screening the information, detecting, rolling back, informing. They have 2 newsletters a week, one in English, one in Ukrainian. They're doing a great work. But this is just one example. I mean, you have several examples. You have Stop Fake in Ukraine that is doing a great job. The School of Journalism. You have independent so-called citizen journalists. You have blogs. This is not Russia, right? This is a society that is vigorous, that is where there is potential, where there is a lot of gray material, there is a lot of. This is not a dead society. Russia is a dead society. There is nothing. There is. It's the Gobi Desert.
Yes, you are absolutely right. Highly motivated professionals and heroic people in
Yes.
Ukraine. There is only one big lack. We have lack of weapons. And what I'm trying to understand, is there something in the information, in, so as we said, synthetic warfare, something that we don't see, where we have something to do, somewhere to strengthen us, because I don't really understand. So many important and really correct things are said all the time in Europe and in United States. But the fact is that we are now in April 2023. There is plenty of armament in United States, for example, on conservation. There is where to take that weaponry, and how to provide Ukraine with that weaponry. That is maybe my last question for today, for tonight. Can you maybe tell me, because I'm a volunteer in a way, I'm trying to do everything possible to enlarge, to force that process, that somehow to, I don't know, to knock on everyone's door and to say we need more weapons, because had we that weaponry before, the war would be won by now.
I
What should
agree.
be done? What should we do?
I totally agree, and I blame the German government for a lot of lack of decision at the beginning of the war. Not only the French, not only the German, but the French government as well. And if it had not been for Great Britain, that has really taken the lead and shown leadership, I don't know where Ukraine would be. And of course, the United States. I'm speaking of the Europeans right now. You can count on the new the new government in Prague is extremely supportive. The Poles are extremely supportive and on board. The Balts. I heard the latest planes from Slovakia arrived. I think the only solution is really to keep asking, because there is a certain tiredness in the public opinion that could arise. And you should not then be demoralized by the lack of enthusiasm you have in some European capitals. Now that most decision makers are on board, I think it's time to sustain your demands and keep asking. And put it on the agenda, systematically on the agenda. I have a lot of respect for the Ukrainian diplomatic service. And I would suggest that you trust more your diplomats, who have shaken up some decision makers and worked the floor in some capitals like I've never seen before. And if there is something you can do, is empower your diplomatic forces in Western countries, and give them carte blanche to shake things up. I know the former ambassador of Ukraine in Germany was much in the critic, has been criticized a lot, but his job was to deliver, and he delivered. He shook them up. And if he had not been there shaking them up and putting the political class in Berlin in front of their responsibility, they would never have had such a wake-up call. So I say, empower the Ukrainian diplomatic service, let them do their excellent. I'm giving you this example. Another example, which is, for example, somebody I really admire is the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations, Kislitsa, who is excellent. When it comes to straight talk, to call a spade a spade, this is the kind of diplomacy we need now. And this is the kind of diplomacy that is the constant wake-up call. Hello, and by the way, the weapons. Hello, and by the way, the weapons. Yes.
Yes, and I think we're also doing our informational counterattack in that way, and I hope it is also of some help. Nathalie, thank you so much for joining me tonight and for sharing so much important information to all of us. And I hope that we are going to meet often. I'm dreaming about having a weekly show. Let's see what is going to be the reaction of our audience. And see you very soon.
See you soon, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.